Welcome to Block and Order, the show that explores the legal issues facing the world of Web3 and beyond. I am Kyle Lawrence, and with me, as always, and thank God he's here because he has to return some videotapes, Moish Peltz.
Be kind, rewind, Kyle. Hope all's well.
That's another thing the kids out there won't understand.
No, nobody knows what that means.
No, nobody knows what that means, especially not producer
We've all
Chris
seen the
after
Matrix.
the conversation we had. Yeah, right.
We've all seen the Matrix, and that's what's important.
Exactly. That's really all that matters in today's world, doesn't it? So.
It's simple things.
It is. All right. Let's kick us off, my man. What's going down?
All right. Well, it'd be hard to start our show without talking about meme coins. And that's the new meta of the past couple weeks.
Sure
and
is.
What you're seeing is, I mean, I guess there's more sophisticated meme coins, but in the past couple weeks, there's a meta of basically someone posting on Twitter, here's my Solana blockchain address, please send me money. And people are sending hundreds of millions of dollars in Solana to random dudes on Twitter and some like influencers and other people, but for the most part, like random dudes. And then they launch a meme coin and it price goes up for a bit and then price doesn't go up anymore and everything crashes and everyone loses their money. So Kyle, are these securities, are these token pre-sales legal?
Probably not. It's really insane what's going on. I mean, in the last 2 weeks or so, you're seeing $150 million in gross token pre-sales. I mean, look, by the letter of the law and the way that we've seen these projects enforced and reviewed by the SEC and the other regulatory agencies, I can't see how they're legal. It's pretty clear that people are purposefully trying to take advantage of an ecosystem that will generate a profit down the road. It estimates future value of something, I don't know what, but gun to my head, just gut instinct, doing this almost 20 years, I would say that these are not legal trades. What do you say?
Well, look, I totally get it, right? You're putting on your securities attorney hat, like,
Sorry,
but right. No, I mean, you can't take it off. I get it. Okay. But, if I'm sending, a few SOL to a random address, am I really doing that with the intention that the developer that's receiving that money is really going to do anything to return a profit? I mean, like, is it the efforts of the developer besides just setting up the coin? Or is it just like there's this irrational market where I don't even know what's happening, right? People are trying to drive the price up. I don't know if there's wash trading. I don't know if there's other kind of crazy stuff going on in the background.
It's definitely wash trading. Yeah.
You never know, right? It's hard to track the money. It's hard to know what's happening, but people are putting money in because they think they're going to make money. So I think there is an economic reality. People are doing it to make money.
Yeah.
But this isn't like an enterprise where there's like profits being generated. Like we're trading memes. These are like dogs with hats and like Pepe's and things like that, right? So we're trading memes here. Is that really a securities analysis? Is it even deserving of the honor of having that analysis?
Is it deserving of my 20 years experience? Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, the sort of snide response that people are giving, and I've actually given it a couple of times when asked the question in other formats, is how can I possibly reasonably expect to make a profit off this nonsense? There's no way that this passes the Howey test. But my favorite one of these was the Dave Portnoy coin that came out that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. I'm really glad I didn't buy it in the moment, even though I wanted to, and I almost fell victim to it. It went up in the first 3 hours like 770, 100,000%, and then immediately crashed minutes later. So yeah, that was a good one. That was fun.
Well, I mean, I think that's the problem, right? Is people are seeing other people make millions of dollars off these things. And you're seeing
is real, baby. Yeah.
Within 24 hours, Book of Meme went from 0 to $1 billion market cap. Yeah. And you're seeing these just exponential, unprecedented, value creation and then destruction happening. And people want to be part of that. All right. Our next topic for today is in the ongoing legal battle between Hermès and Mason Rothschild, or the artist known as Mason Rothschild, over the MetaBirkins NFTs. It turned out that Mason Rothschild was approached by a the Spirit Museum in Stockholm to curate and present the MetaBirkins NFTs as part of I believe a curated presentation on commercial art. And there, as you remember from a previous Block and Order episode, the court, Judge Rakoff, had previously entered an injunction barring Mason Rothschild from basically doing anything with these NFTs. So he went back to the court and said, hey, court, I want to give this museum permission to use my NFTs for artistic display purposes to kind of give people a history of art or NFTs and art and commercial art, etc. And I think it's a pretty interesting issue. And ultimately, the judge came down saying they held a hearing and said, no, the permanent injunction bars the artist from promoting, minting, selling NFTs. And this is kind of falling into that promotion bucket.
Yeah, the word permanent kind of has a meaning there. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So, the judge said no. So, Kyle, I think it's interesting. You think about I mean, is this a surprise when you think about what we were talking about before?
I mean, this doesn't surprise me at all. I'm not super familiar with the inner workings of this case, but just the fact that the judge held that is completely unsurprising, given what the prior ruling had been. I mean, that to me, that's the biggest thing. I mean, look, judges don't like to be told no, they don't like to be questioned and things like that. They're like doctors in that regard. And my father was a judge, so I can go ahead and say that. But I mean, look, a permanent injunction has meaning. What I find interesting about this is, I wonder if the art itself was not what it was, if it would have had the same effect, because it was like a fetus inside a bag or something like that. And I wonder if it wasn't that, if it wouldn't have had the same reaction. I'll say, I don't, I'm just kind of speculating. I don't know if because you're more in tune with
well,
works
these
of
are like
intellectual property.
fuzzy Birkin bags. I don't think
Well,
there's anything.
The mini ones are, but I think the original one was not. I think the original one was a little more graphic, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean,
I don't think any graphic nature played into the judge's decision.
Yeah.
I think he just found the artist not credible and just thought this guy's really just trying to scam and make a buck, and he doesn't deserve having his artistic vision being perpetuated because it's really just a scam.
Right.
Now I don't know, right? That to me seems a little bit too far, right? And I do think when you think about art and kind of the rights of expression and First Amendment rights and things like that, to say, well, this museum cannot even present these in that museum context.
Yeah.
To me, that seems like a little bit like, all right, if we can, why don't we like find a way that like, all right, the Rothschild can't profit here. All sorts of whatever restrictions we got to go. But like, I think it's educational to know what these things are, their history. And so like I think there should have been a way to craft, and maybe the parties just failed to, Hermès just didn't want that. Right. And so like they kind of went to the court and then they got what they got. Right.
Interesting. It's the second episode in a row we're talking about a museum. Should have talked about the breath NFTs and see what the judge thinks about that.
All right. So on March 7th, 2024, the SF50 Act, the Wyoming Decentralized, Unincorporated, Nonprofit Association Act, let's call it the DUNA, was signed into law with an effective date of July 1st, 2024. This bill was very closely modeled after the Wyoming LLC Act for DAOs, the DAO LLC Act, as well as the existing Wyoming Unincorporated Nonprofit Act, or UNA, which is something that you and I have taken advantage of in certain DAO formations. But now we have what is intended to be a domestic DAO act for nonprofit DAOs that can really do, maybe not even just nonprofit DAOs, right? But to be a good U.S. structure for a DAO. So, Kyle, what do you think? Is this going to be an effective tool for other blockchain projects and prospective DAOs?
I definitely think so. And I have a lot of thoughts about this. I remember when we first started talking about DAOs and people wanting to form them in Wyoming, the scuttlebutt around it was, well, if all of us get together and go to Wyoming, not the most populated state, we can influence the legislation and get something like this done. And I thought everyone was batshit crazy for thinking that. And here I am to eat crow. I was wrong, everybody. For the record, I was mistaken. Here we are. I think this is fantastic for two reasons specifically. One, previously Wyoming had allowed people to form DAO LLCs, but it was kind of murky what you had to do. You had to put the actual wallet address you were using and disclose some of the code to the state. It was a very murky process, and even the state people who worked in the filing offices weren't exactly sure how to treat these things.
Right.
And the second thing is the best aspect of this is that now people in DAOs can't be sued as general partners and treated as general partnerships. And what that means is for the people watching is if Moish and I just form or get together and pool our resources and try to start a business without forming an entity, we are general partners. That means both of us are completely liable for anything that happens, any debts, any obligations of that partnership. If Moish takes out a bank loan and while I'm traveling in Europe, I have no idea about it, I'm personally liable for that. Those days are gone. That shield of liability protection should give an enormous amount of comfort to the people who are forming these entities. I think this is fantastic. And from Moish, do you think in terms of other challenges that are facing blockchain projects, what sort of level of certainty do you think in terms of intellectual property protection that this can afford projects going forward?
Yeah, look, I think you nailed it on the head about this general partner liability. And the problem is if you choose to do nothing, then a court will choose the structure for you, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is incumbent upon DAOs to take a very measured approach there. And like maybe the after doing all that effort, the answer is like doing nothing,
Hmm.
which I know some people are advocating, and we generally don't really agree with that. But if you're going to do something that you want a pretty loose structure, but you want to not be a general partnership, we felt that the UNA structure was a pretty good one,
Yeah.
at least for domestic purposes. That being in the U.S. And this just seems like, well, let's add on and contemplate all the blockchain things to go with that. So I think that's fantastic.
Mhm.
And shout out to David Kerr, Miles Jennings, who did a lot of the work putting this together. Friends of the show, we'd love to have them on a future episode.
Next up, on a previous Block and Order episode, we questioned the decision by Prometheum, the formerly registered brokerage that can trade in crypto assets, that Ethereum was going to be their first quote unquote security that they were going to allow being traded through their platform, which we thought was a puzzling move considering that Ethereum is not a security. Well, recently, a group of 48 members of Congress, led by 40 Republicans, led by chairman of the House Financial Services and Agriculture Committees, of all things, have expressed their apprehension regarding Prometheum's plan to do this. They argue that treating ETH as a quote unquote security will have irreparable consequences for the digital asset markets. The SEC, of course, and the Night King Gary Gensler has not publicly clarified whether ETH is considered a security, especially after Ethereum's transition to a proof of stake consensus mechanism via the merge. Lack of clarity has fueled uncertainty in the crypto industry. The CFTC considers ETH a commodity similar to Bitcoin, further complicating the regulatory landscape. Moish, just taking all of this at face value and pat on the back again, we were right, which is always a good thing. We do get paid to be right. Where do you think Prometheum is going to go, or more specifically, where do you think the SEC is going to go? Because they're really the ones who have to answer this.
Yeah, look, I don't think the SEC is just going to suddenly wake up one day and say, you know what, we were wrong. We're sorry. Ethereum is not a security. Our bad.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's happening. I think you have a few things that are happening here, which now obviously Congress is getting involved, and that's probably good that they're getting involved. I'm skeptical that they're going to act on that and create new law
The
anytime
heck
soon.
you say.
Right. But look, in the meantime, right, Prometheum is operating as a securities brokerage exchange. I guess maybe that's the right word. They're going to offer Ethereum as a security, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
on the other hand, you have all the exchange traded products, the ETFs that are trying to now like, okay, Bitcoin's under our belt. This is probably the most successful ETF launch in like a generation, if I'll, ever. Let's start going down the line. Let's get Ethereum, right? So they're all making applications for Ethereum. And of course, they're saying this is not a security, right? So now you're very quickly, and the applicants for these Ethereum exchange traded products are like BlackRock and like, major,
Grayscale, big boys.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are big boys, and they've got big boy money flying around the political scene, right? So you're setting up kind of a showdown here of something's got to give. The SEC tried to hold the line on Bitcoin and said no, and they got like smacked down by the DC Circuit. And so, how much political capital does the SEC have to hold the line? This is a security, and how much are these big commercial entities going to get into the system here and say one way or the other is or is not? And how much is Congress going to have to roll in kind of mediating that and potentially eventually passing law?
Not a great couple of weeks for the SEC, as we see.
I mean, this is shaping up to be a disaster. I just don't see how any of this gets resolved. Like, no one's gonna. There's no responsibility. The buck stops nowhere. No one's like. It's just a mess. Yeah. So if you're looking at this like in your BlackRock and you got billions of dollars to like, all right, I don't care. Just like pay my attorneys to submit the thing, like whatever. But if you're a small business, like, I mean, in some respect, like Prometheum, like if it's ruled as not a security and they have this. It kind of sucks for them,
then they
right?
have egg on their face, right? Well, that's what we said. We said, why don't you just offer Disney stock? Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, damn it.
It does not make sense. I mean, it's dysfunction, and that's what we have, and that's what we're going to have for the foreseeable future.
That's it. Yeah. Moving right along. Coinbase, in the developing saga between the Coinbase and the SEC, Judge Catherine Polk. Speaking of the SEC, wow, who knew that this was next up on the order? Judge Catherine Polk Fila of the U.S. District Court for the SDNY denied most of Coinbase's motion to dismiss their current lawsuit with the SEC, setting a deadline for a case scheduling plan and allowing the litigation to move forward. I believe the deadline is April 19th, so that'll be here before we know it. In winning its motion, this is actually one of the decent ones the SEC had. The SEC argued that the economic realities of a transaction determine its classification as a security, not the labels or the novelty of crypto as a term. You could set that to music. That is what they say every single time. And frankly, I'm getting sick of it because it just, I don't like hearing the same thing. I'm not somebody who likes to repeat himself, and I'm tired of hearing the SEC repeat themselves. And this sort of aligns
the economic reality.
Stop it. Yeah. No, stop it. Damn it. We're not friends anymore. This aligns with the court's longstanding framework for identifying assets as securities. But one of the interesting aspects of this, though, is that while the court dismissed Coinbase's motion, it denied their motion, it did dismiss the idea that Coinbase Wallet acted as a brokerage. The wallet service is not a traditional broker because it interacts with users directly on the platform. And this gets to the major questions doctrine, which is the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, which says that the SEC can only act within the framework that Congress says it can act. And this has been a longstanding battle over the past couple of years with respect to the SEC being perceived as having exceeded its authority. And the SEC says, well, the Congress isn't doing what it's supposed to do. What are we supposed to do? We have to deal with these issues. We can only use the regulatory framework that we have. So this is really interesting. Moish, given what we just talked about with the SEC, where do you think that this is just sort of cascading things that are going to work against their ability to legislate these things? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this falls right into that same model of like, well, there just isn't clarity, and Congress can't really provide much guidance, and the SEC is just kind of slapping major players around because that's what they think they're supposed to do or have the political mandate to do. Mm-hmm. Like here, I mean, in some respects, it's not very surprising.
Yeah,
a motion to dismiss like this is generally denied, especially against government agency, which are typically given significant deference in cases like this. So that's not surprising. I did think that the granting on the Coinbase Wallet product was pretty interesting. Finding that Coinbase Wallet providing a software for non-custodial, people can like MetaMask, right? Can swap things in their wallet, and they can go to Uniswap, or they can go to some other place, or they can go to Coinbase. I thought saying that's actually a pretty big win, I think, at this point in the case. So there were some interesting things about the decision, and I think also you're just seeing every one of these cases. There's more and more and more of a body of law that these judges are turning to. They're getting more confidence about like determining these issues, and also the party, right? The Coinbase attorneys, especially, the pleadings are really good. The court had a lot to go on here,
Right.
so I think it's an interesting decision. But it's the denial of an early uh,
Yeah.
uh, motion. So this case is going to keep on going. So we've got years before this case is disposed fully, potentially.
Endless amounts of fodder for block and order. You love to see it. Sorry, rest of the world, but you service us.
Never-ending
Yeah.
content. That's what we have.
Last up on the order, Moish, I think this is a topic of personal interest to you.
Yeah. So recently, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and the U.S. Copyright Office released a report, which was years in the making and was part of an effort that I was involved with some of their colleagues and some of the organizations I'm involved in. Initially, was a series of roundtables that the USPTO and the Copyright Office had to hear from people in the industry and legal practitioners and artists and so forth about, where are we in trademark law and copyright law? Are the laws adequate? What are the issues, as related to intellectual property and NFTs and kind of related uses of blockchain for these commercial purposes? And the sum and substance of the report is like, yeah, we're good. We got all the laws we need for right now. Good thing we did all this work and study. And you know what? Like, I don't disagree with that.
I know it's just a funny way to put it.
I know but it's kind of true. And it was nice because I was quoted a few times in the report, and they, along with a lot of friends of ours, friends of the show, also like some serious academics and people practicing industry that had some really insightful comments. So it was actually, I thought, a pretty well put together report. But yeah, I mean, the reality is there's a lot of issues. A lot of these issues are still being worked through. There's not a lot of like hard conclusions, and we're just not at the point. I mean, what we were talking about before about we're Congress, we send a letter, we get really mad at people, but are we going to pass any legislation? Like, no,
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
not happening now. It's not economically feasible. It's not politically feasible. There's an election in November. Like, nothing's going to happen between now and then, especially on such a narrow issue like this.
Definitely true.
But I think it does kind of take a measurement, like, where are we now? Kind of this like 22, 23, 24 era, IP NFTs, get some data, get some feedback. I mean, I think it's good to get feedback for the agencies because they are actually, and people are applying for trademarks, people are applying for copyright, all the time for this stuff. And so they got feedback, issued a report, and we'll revisit that in a few years.
Do you think that this was influenced in any way by the state of the NFT market? I mean, if this report were being or if this study were being conducted 2-3 years ago, would that have changed the outcome? I'm just curious. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I do think the NFT market, as it kind of percolated in 21 and 22, was like a certain type of business and product that that was kind of popular. You think about like Bored Ape Yacht Club, and like there's a certain like methodology of like this is what an NFT is. And a lot of what the comments I made, and I think a lot of what I was kind of hinting at was this is like one very specific use case that like people are thinking about NFTs of like right now. But one of the reasons actually against that I think was quoted on this topic against putting in regulation right now is like you're only thinking about that particular thing,
Right.
and you're trying to regulate for like everything and everything to come. And so if you start regulating for only this kind of narrow issue, but as it turns out, 5 years from now, people really want to use NFTs for like this other thing that we've never contemplated, and you have kind of this blocking regulation in place, that'd be kind of disastrous. So I think it's actually the right. I think a lot of in this area, we just have to work through these issues more. They have to be, litigated more. People have to think and write, and the academics got to figure this stuff out more. And at some point, we're going to get to a place where it's like, all right, there's clearly an issue. Here's the legislative fix. Let's do it. And I think this is actually an area where the U.S., was and has been a leader when it comes to, internet law and anti-counterfeiting and things like that. So I think that can continue here and should continue here. It's just it's not the time yet.
Interesting stuff. Great job on
Yeah.
participating and being quoted.
Cool.
That wraps it up for the 10th episode of Block and Order. I cannot believe it. Our aluminum episode. How about that? We made it, man.
10th episode. Who would have thought we would have made it this long?
Who would have think it? And here's to 10,000 more. I know we have it in us. I know we have this 10,000. Let's go. 10, we're gonna ramp up, but we're gonna ramp it up. We're young, man. We got plenty of time. We got producer Chris here, who's younger than both of us. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That's right. Sorry, Chris, you're fired. You can. Sorry. Well, you're fired after the episode anyway. Well, Kyle, thank you, everybody.
Thank you sincerely for and thank you to all the listeners that have listened to us, that have watched, that have been around for the first 10 episodes. You are the true OGs. If you're listening now, I don't know how many of them are out there. I guess we probably have the analytics, but you're all cordially welcome during NFT NYC week. April 4th, we are having a luncheon. If you're in New York City, you're more than welcome to join us. We'd love to hear in-person feedback on our show. Please come by our event. We'll post an RSVP in the show notes below. And thank you, Kyle. Thank you, all listeners, for making the first 10 episodes amazing. And we're confident that there's a lot of great stuff to come.
No, well put, Moish. And if anybody's at NFT NYC, Moish and I are both speaking. You're on Thursday, I believe. I'm Friday late morning, which is a better time slot than I've historically had, which has been Friday morning at 8. So I'll take that. And if you're in town, please look us up. We'd love to get together. We can talk about crypto, AI, anything you want. And thank you very much for watching. Any topics you want us to cover, please drop a comment down below. Remember to follow us on all our socials. We will leave links to those in the show notes as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Please note that the show is meant for informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing contained on the show is meant to be construed as legal and/or financial advice. Please consult your own attorneys and financial advisors if you're going to take the plunge. Also, any assets or NFTs or anything else that we mention on the show, Moish and I and the other people involved in Block and Order may own those assets personally. That is not meant in any way to be construed as an endorsement of those assets. Very special thank you to producer Chris, even though he's not seen The Matrix. Without him, this show would not be possible. So for myself, on behalf of Block and Order, I am Kyle Lawrence.
And I'm Moish Peltz. Take care.
See you, everybody. Take care.